Hey guys, hope you're doing well. Hope you've enjoyed the content so far, especially with our Diamond Mine Baseball replay, which is at the moment, I would say, probably like the centerpiece here of the replays that I'm doing in the various projects that we have. I'll go ahead here and show you my screen. I'm going to have to, you'll have to bear with me for a second here because OBS has given me a little bit more of a problem because of whatever is done here to my webcam. I'm not sure why my settings reset every time the computer resets, but whatever. So it is. That's just the way that it works. That's what she wrote. You can see here we do have a close pennant race in the American League. Still, the Yankees now are a game behind. We do have some other games to play. The National League, the Giants have a margin of 70 runs. Nobody else is even close to that. The next closest is 30 with the Cardinals. The American League is a little bit more normal, but the New York Giants are really playing well. But that's not what I wanted to talk with you about here. So we talked yesterday about one of these options that comes up in Diamond Mine. There's another one that I want to talk about with you today that doesn't really apply to the replays that we're doing here, at least this replay, but it will apply at some point in the future. If you go over to the organizer, or if you go over to either of the leagues, it doesn't matter which one you do, you go to rules and options, you're going to see a thing here which is called limit bench playing time. Limit bench playing time is probably the most controversial of all of the things in Diamond Mine Baseball because of the crazy stuff that can happen when you use it. So one of the questions I think a lot of people will have is, why in the world do you use real-life transactions when you're not using real-life lineups, right? Who cares about this? Who cares about using one but not the other, right? Is it realistic at all? Is this just, sort of a pipe world in a fantasy or whatever? This doesn't really prevent you from overusing players. While it is true, I'm going to show you the reason why we do it this way. This comes from years and years of experience with the Diamond Mine Baseball. Limit bench playing time is the option down here that you can take a look at, and we'll look here at playing time limits, right? So that's kind of the name of the game here. There are playing time limits that Diamond Mine Baseball will put in for you if you allow the computer to keep track of it. And you might think, well, that's not such a bad thing, is it? Right? Then the computer can do it. I don't have to sit around and worry about this. Sorry for taking a screenshot right in front of you. It will tell you here, you may choose to put limits on playing time for one or all of the players in your teams. You can put them on for individual players. And you can also use different at-bat limits and things like that. So we'll start with pitching. You can limit the number of games started and relief appearances each pitcher will make. These limits apply only if you choose a usage mode of time for the pitching portion of your manager profile. This is like if you're having the computer choose a lineup, basically. I wouldn't do this because, you're basically saying, okay, this guy's got exactly 30 starts. He's not going to play anymore, right? Whatever. I would trust the game's fatigue system to do a lot of this for me and not have me have to make up some arbitrary rule. Diamond Mine does a particularly poor job with this. I actually think OOTP does this a lot better. We'll get to that in the future. In time mode, the computer manager ignores your rotation. Instead, it looks at how many starts each pitcher is limited to and spreads those starts evenly over the season. The pitcher with the most real-life starts will be selected on opening day, even if he is not listed in the number one slot in the rotation. Right. So, it's an option. You can see, right, why people like to use real life lineups when you read that, because you're like, oh, so the computer might take one of the worst pitchers on the team just because he wasn't injured that year or something like that. You're in between a rock and a hard place because either you're doing a replay the way I'm doing it, which takes a long time and which really requires a lot of effort, or you're letting the computer make some bonehead decision and then you're going to be swearing at yourself under your breath. Either way, you lose or you lose, and that's the problem that you have. Really, we could use a better AI, but this is a game that has an AI that was designed in the mid-'80s, as we learned a couple of days ago. Now, the other thing, what we're talking about here is at-bat limits. For batters, you can indicate how many at-bats they are allowed to get against left and right-handed pitching. These limits are enforced only if you play games using the limit bench playing time option, which is described in the league's rules and options topic. When this option is in effect, Diamond Mine will not use players as substitutes if it would put them on a pace to exceed their limits, unless injuries or rejections make it necessary to use the player. That's the key. If it would put them on a pace to exceed their limits, that's where strange things start happening. That's where you start getting guys who are being used really bizarrely. That's where your projects will start falling apart, right? These limits have no effect on starting lineups. Diamond Mine assumes that if you want to limit playing time with this option, you will take care to ensure that these players are not put in any of the saved lineups and are not assigned spot start percentages that would cause them to get too many starts. Anyway, it's a mess. And that's the thing. There's a reason why I kind of hesitate while I read that, because you're like, Yeah, something weird is going on. Here's an example. A good example is a player who batted 350 and 25 at-bats. Without these limits, Diamond Mine's computer manager would be inclined to use him very frequently as a pinch hitter or as a replacement during the game, and he might get 100 at-bats in the Diamond Mine League season. If this player is not used in either save lineup, the limit bench playing time option would limit his at-bats to about 25 unless injuries force him into more games. You may want to set limits just for the players with extremely strong batting statistics. There are many other players who played sparingly in real life because they were injured or on the farm team or because there were better players ahead of them. These players are not likely to be overused by the computer manager, so you may want to set very high limits for them so they're available whenever they're needed. Right, that's kind of the way that this works, and it's a good way to have a replay in which the guys who played very sparingly in real life, like, never get into any games, and in which you end up with a bunch of guys who, were kind of utility players who end up being your pinch hitter every single time around. Let's go back and look at league rules and options, and we'll read about this here. And again, I'm sorry, I know that this is really small. You probably can't see this even if you have a 4K screen. Let's see here. We can find, here we go. Whether to use the option to limit bench playing time. Every year, there are some players who didn't play very much, but produced excellent statistics when they did play. If you play Diamond Mine games with the computer manager involved, the computer manager will want to use these players much more often than they were used in real life. If you set up your manager profiles so the players are not in the starting lineups and you activate the limit bench playing time option, the computer manager will limit the use of these players and thereby avoid giving them a larger role than they had in real life. That's kind of the way that it works. It's controversial, I think. Honestly, I'm going to put it to you this way. We have a lot of information about every season of baseball history nowadays, thanks to Baseball Reference and RetroSheet. Instead of using this crappy computer option, you can set up transactions to stop guys from going on the roster as they would have in real life. That's what you should do. Then you can't overuse them. If they were only on the roster for 20 days and they're only on the roster 20 days for you, yeah, let the computer overuse them if it really wants to, right? That's what I say. Anyway, I know this is a little short video, a little bit to the point. Love to know what your opinions are on the subject, but limit bench playing time is kind of the bane of the Diamond Mine existence, trust me. And I think we'll talk about that more in the future because I have a couple topics to mention and a couple specific examples. Talk to you again later. Bye-bye.